Today's episode of the Ramp It Up podcast contains explicit language and may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener's discretion is advised. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Ramp It Up podcast with your host, Ronell Sinuis.
Are you ready to ramp it up?
Ramp it up, ew!
Hey, yo, ramp it up, B.
Girl, ramp it up! Ramp it up!
The Ramp It Up podcast.
Hey, you need to ramp it up.
Ramp it up.
And we are back with another episode of the Ramp It Up podcast. I'm your host and your favorite Zoe on Wheels, Ronell. 2 weeks ago was our last episode. It feels like it was so long ago because so much has happened in the last 2 weeks. It's been super busy this month of March, but good busy, not bad busy. So we have a lot to catch up on. Hopefully everyone's been doing great and staying safe out there. Rona is still around, but by now, hopefully we've either been vaccinated or have come up with measures of our own at home to stay safe and to stay healthy. On our last episode, we had Anna representing FAST, the Florida Alliance for Assistive Services and Technology, just to share about assistive technology and services that are available throughout the state of Florida, rather. And she and others in the department are the ones that kind of helped me get set up with my assistive technology. So shout out to Anna for joining us last episode. If you haven't done so already, you can check it out. You should be subscribed to our podcast by now. But if you haven't done so, go ahead, subscribe to our podcast. We're on all major podcast listening platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify. You name it, we're on it. And if we're not on it yet, we're working on it. Also, review. We want to know what you're thinking about the podcast. Rate us, hopefully 5 stars. Review us, email us. Let us know what you're really thinking. Our email is rampituppodcast@gmail.com. And of course, we want to connect with you on our socials. Hit us up on Instagram. That's ramp.it.up.podcast. Or you can just search Ramp It Up Podcast on Facebook. I want to know what you guys are doing. Connect with us. Share your pictures. Share your stories. Give us your topic ideas. And, of course, let me know how I'm doing. We want to stay connected with you guys, create a nice community of wheelchair users and those who love us. Now, the month of March, as I said, has been busy. Very busy these past 2 weeks. In fact, your boy, your very own Ronell, Zoe on Wheels, was in Orlando. No, I was not visiting Mickey Mouse and the rest of the Disney squad. I was actually participating in a panel discussion at the HIMSS 2022 conference. What is HIMSS, you ask? Well, it is not to be confused with HIMS. HIMSS that I went to was HIMSS. Now, regular HIMSS, HIMS, is a telehealth company that deals with male issues like erectile dysfunction and hair loss and sexual health and a few other things, which I may have to holler at some point in the near future, but that's not where I went. I participated in HIMSS, the Healthcare Information and Management Systems Society. It was their 2022 global conference, and I had the honor of representing the United Spinal, specifically the Tech Access Group, as a lead member on one of their panels. What did we talk about? We talked about patient experience and innovation in healthcare and making sure people like myself who have spinal cord injury or disorders, or those who are just wheelchair users, or anyone with complex healthcare concerns or issues, are not being left out of the conversation of innovation when it comes to the healthcare space. We talked about a lot. It was a great experience for more than one reason. The first being, it was my first foray out of town since my injury. 5 years of remaining, I don't want to say being stuck, but remaining in the Tri-County area, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County area. This is my first time out of the area. I have planned a few other trips. They just didn't work out in the end. I have not flown yet. We drove. It was a 4-hour ride to the Orlando area. So that was one reason why I was really geeked and really excited to go on this trip. And the second being, this was my first in-person, for one, in the last couple of years, but just first big conference post-injury that I participated in and stood up and spoke in front of. So it was a lot, but it was such a great experience, a great learning experience. I want to share so much about it, but I don't have time in this episode. I think I'll make sure I'll do another episode before the end of the month, a quick short one, just to kind of talk about the conference in itself, the trip up there, and just the experience of getting back out there post-injury. So look out. I'll see if I can squeeze in one more episode before the end of March. That being said, today I had the opportunity to catch up with Stefan Henry. He is one of the co-founders of Level the Curve. He is a mechanical engineer. He is also a C5-6 quad, who I had the pleasure of coming across in a United Spinal meeting. Yes, he's another United Spinal member. Stefan's a super cool guy. We had a great conversation. We geeked out a little bit about anime and manga, but of course he shared his story of his injury. He was injured in a car accident when he was 14. But of course, I'll let him tell his story when we get into the interview. But like I said, he is the co-founder of Level the Curve, which is an organization that he helped put together to create adaptive devices to help individuals with mobility, specifically spinal cord injuries, but anyone else who may have mobility issues, to live their daily lives. We've been talking about assistive technologies, whether they be high tech or low tech, and I felt speaking with Stefan would be a great transition into some of the organizations and companies that assist people like myself to get our daily activities done. Look out. Coming up next is the conversation with none other than Stefan Henry. All right. On today's episode, joining me, I have Stefan Henry, a fellow member of United Spinal, the tech access group we met a couple months ago. Stefan, so what's up to the people?
Hey, what's up? What's up? How's it going, guys? Thank you, Ronell, for having me on your podcast.
Definitely great to connect. We met on a United Spinal call and then had the chance to speak on one of the panels. Actually, I think we were talking about the impact of being African-American and having spinal cord injuries. And I'm not gonna lie to you, like I said, it was cool seeing so many brown people on the same call. There's not too many of us. It was good. Yourself, me, and like I think there were 5 of us all together, not including Vincenzo.
Right.
So it was just good hearing our perspectives and about everyone else. And after that, I was like, yo, I just definitely, one, have to connect because more brown people, and 2, just to hear more about your individual story. And I had the chance to check out the bio that you have on the website, and I was like, yo, Stefan definitely sounds like a guy I want to connect with.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it very, very much.
All right, dope. So I'm gonna give you the chance to tell me a little bit about yourself. From your bio, you're a New Yorker. We were both born in Brooklyn, although I left at a very young age. So I'm a Miami boy. Anybody ask you 305 till I die. But tell us a bit about yourself and your background.
My name is Stefan Henry. I am a 32-year-old male. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. I currently work for the MTA. And I also work on a side project called Level the Curve, where we make adaptive products for people with disabilities, things like eating tools, cooking utensils, things to kind of make life easier for people with disabilities in their everyday life. And we try to make it so that it's highly adaptable, stuff that we can probably use on our own without the use of like aids or anything like that. And, it just helps you get out into the community, that sort of thing. So I guess like the path to engineering there's a lot to it.
Okay. All right, so let's start early on. So I was reading your bio. You and I sound like we have a bit of a same, I guess, interest when it comes to like comic books and anime. I've told people since Jump, even back when it wasn't cool, is what I was a part of. So tell me a little bit about your favorite comic books and just the animes that really got you into it.
So, animes, Jesus, the list is fucking never ending. Cowboy Bebop was probably one of my favorite animes of all time, I have to say. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Okay, see,
Top the charts.
I never got into Cowboy Bebop like everyone else, but Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, my number one favorite. Number one.
Yes. Hands down, beats out everything else. I don't care what anyone else tells me. It's probably the best anime of all time in my head.
We are going to be friends. I think that's what just happened right there.
I've literally rewatched that series like 3 times.
At least 3 times. Now, okay, compare it to, did you see regular Full Metal Alchemist versus Brotherhood?
I did see regular Full Metal Alchemist. I liked it, but I didn't know about Brotherhood.
It was a good intro. And then when I saw Brotherhood, I was like, oh, this is what Full Metal Alchemist should have been. Okay.
Yeah. And it's like, you guys, oh fuck, I don't know if people are gonna watch the anime now.
I mean, they should, but it's a really old one. So this is a spoiler, they're fine.
You swallowed God. Like, let's get the concept of that.
Aspiration, Joe. Hey, that's it. But okay, so you talked a bit about your comic book interests, of course, growing up in the 90s. You got to give it to the X-Men, but you talked a bit about Iron Man. Tell us about your interests.
Yeah, so like Renaud said, I was pretty much into comics. I was more into like the on TV, comics like X-Men the animated series. Avengers were still a thing back then, and Spider-Man, and then eventually Tony Stark, Iron Man specifically. And I was always into things like Transformers and stuff too. And essentially, I was always kind of like building things or trying to build things. Like I would definitely like always get the Transformers toys, like Beast Wars and all that kind of stuff, and like enjoy putting them together. I got into Legos for a little bit. I was really all over the place, but I think like what really got to me was the idea of Tony Stark, like the idea of actually having a dude who can build a suit that can fight a dragon, it's like what the fuck, like this dude's superpower is literally just to be a genius and manipulate things to work in his ability. And it's not like Batman, where Batman has like kung fu skills and all this kind of stuff, and he just kind of like choosing to jump from building to building, even though he's a billionaire and he could just put on some tech and like go beat people up. Tony Stark was like, hey, I'm a billionaire. I know I'm a billionaire and I'm smart. Why not just build things to help save my life and save other people's lives in the process? Like the idea of Stark Industries was actually pretty appealing too, because even though he started off as a weapons manufacturer, when he changed his company to like start making adaptive tools and like start like making things to heal people, I was like, oh shit, he's a superhero actively and openly. He's a dick, granted, but he's one of the nicest people on the planet.
He had a small ego and alcohol problem, but he help people out.
So I guess that really manifested a lot more when I got injured, because I was hurt at 14 years old. I was in a car accident with my aunt. We were driving to my other aunt's in Jersey for Easter. And they normally do like an Easter hunt, like an egg hunt and a full barbecue out in Jersey. And so I was in the passenger seat and I had a drink in my hand. It was falling and my aunt tried to catch it. She lost control of the car. The airbag popped and it snapped my neck back, and it made me a C5-6 quadriplegic. So with that being said, when I eventually got out of the coma that I was stuck in for a month,
I was a jump. Okay, didn't expect that. I was gonna. So was that like the spinal cord injury was the only thing that happened, or since you clearly were in a coma, were there other health concerns as well?
So it was a medicated coma for a while, but the thing is, the coma went on for way past the time that I was supposed to be medicated. So I was out for a full month, and they had to give me a trach, basically full tracheotomy, had me on like Ensure and like vitamins and stuff like that, until I managed to wake up of my own accord in like a month and change after my accident, to find out that I was disabled.
Okay, so again, you were unconscious. So if you remember, it's been a while now, but what were some of your first thoughts when you're waking up? Because you're in a hospital. I'm assuming you weren't moving the way you thought you were responding physically. So what were some of those first few moments to days like?
You know, it's weird. When I was knocked out, I had like a kind of like a bit of a weird daydream, it felt like, where this is gonna sound crazy, but I felt
That's crazy as you want.
I literally felt like I was being carried by like 3 college students into a room, and the room had this really bright light in there, and I didn't really even know, like literally all right, so I gotta explain this properly. Almost literally right after we crashed, right, I woke up and I couldn't feel my limbs. Straight up. I tried to move my hands, I couldn't do it. I tried to move my shoulders, I couldn't do it. I couldn't move anything. Almost right after that, I knocked out again and I went into the ambulance. And then after that, I knocked out again, and I ended a month later in a hospital bed in Jersey. That's when I woke up. So I don't know exactly when I had this dream. It might have actually been literally when I was getting pulled into the room. But I had a dream that like someone literally lifted me onto their back and carried me into a room, dropped me, put something in my wrist, and like there was a shining light in the corner that I kind of assumed was like a mix between either an angel or I was seeing a light, because I wasn't sure at that point what was real and what wasn't. Right? Like I wasn't sure if I was a dream or if I was actually in reality. So that shining light, I thought it was either like, this is either me trying to go to heaven or someone like trying to like shine an incredible light in my face.
Essentially,
right?
the proverbial light, or just someone really annoying with a flashlight. Just one of the
Like literally one of the two. So when I woke up, the light was less intense,
okay.
and it was kind of like in a corner by a door, right? But I kept trying to reach for it, and I realized that I couldn't do it. And you gotta remember, I was 13, turning 14 at the time, right? So I kind of thought, hey man, I'm gonna spring up in like 3 days.
Yeah.
My body just needs to heal, everything's gonna be fine. And then like the surgeon came in and he was like, he actually gave me a little bit of false hope, which I kind of wish he didn't do. Where he was very much just like, so you have spinal cord injury, which means right now you're not going to be able to walk. And you're not going to be able to use your hands. There's a chance that you get some recovery back, but there's also a good chance that you won't ever again. And I cried.
I'm pardon me, because one, I know recalling it sometimes isn't the easiest thing, but I heard a similar declaration when I was 30. So I can't imagine hearing that at 13, where essentially your life just started. You're probably just hitting high school, puberty's just started or right around the corner. You're a kid.
Yeah.
So, and I know, Lord knows, I needed therapy after that. How can you say you dealt with that, or how did your parents help you deal with that, if at all?
So I have a really tumultuous relationship with my parents, generally speaking. They're very verbally and emotionally abusive. That being said, it was hard. It was hard. There were a lot of things going on in my head at the same time, right? Like, one, when you're 13, you're kind of just stepping into your manhood, right? Like, so, you're almost literally just thinking about sex, right? Like,
Right, oh, look at this. Oh, right.
Like, how does this work? Like, what? What's going on here?
That's trick. Oh, oh, God.
So, my first thought was like, I was a track star before I got injured. I was supposed to go to high school to do track and field in Brooklyn Tech, and clearly that wasn't happening again, right? And in my household, it was very, I used every moment that I could to escape certain things, right? And one of the ways that I did it was through running, and through being active, being really sports heavy, going to my cousins' houses if I can, playing sports with them, yada yada. So when I got hurt, my very first thing was I got super depressed because I was never going to be able to play sports the same way again. And I didn't feel like I had many people that I could talk to at the moment either. Thankfully, my mom and dad weren't as bad as they were before because I just got hurt. They were, like, I don't want to paint a terrible picture of them. My mom was she was with me every day. My grandmother was too. My mom's a nurse, so she had my back in multiple situations. And just like emotionally, she's just not good at those sort of things. Never has been. So I will admit that I actually had some really bad thoughts. I went to a really bad place. And if it wasn't for my brother and sister, and honestly me loving them a lot and not wanting to leave them in a bad situation, I may not have been here right now. Let's just leave it like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But thankfully I am, and thankfully they are too. And it was basically my wanting them to live and do well and not being in a bad situation where I already knew that I was mostly the emotional support for them. And I was really taking care of them, to be honest. To the best of like a 14-year-old could actually do.
Yeah.
This is like, don't do anything that will harm yourself, or like make sure you eat every day, make sure your homework's good, that sort of stuff. I had to make sure that I was there. That's
a lot for any person to have to do with, more so now that you're injured and you're trying to figure out your own headspace. And so can you tell me a little bit about the hospital stay and how therapy went for you?
Yeah, the hospital stay, it's a combination of things, right? Like, so the first hospital, I actually ended up getting a big wound on my butt because nobody turned to me, and my mom wasn't aware that nobody was turning to me until she like saw a huge bed sore that I couldn't get past. Yeah. So I remember I had been knocked out for a full month. So that bed sore had time to fester. It was almost to the bone. And those nurses, they didn't seem like they cared at all, honestly. They didn't, nobody turned to me at night. Nobody really checked in. Like my mom would have to stay over and make sure that I had food and like make sure that, you know, people were being kind and actually turning me at night and things like that, just to make sure that I was getting proper care. And once again, I was 14, right? Like I don't know anything about insurance. I don't know anything about the hospital system in reality. Like I have no real concept of like how to defend myself. So they would do things like the therapists, I will say, therapists were always trying to help me out with like extending my arm and stuff like that. But even after a while, they quit too. And actually, because of them, I can't fully open up this arm. It's always like a little bit at an angle if you watch my elbow.
Mine as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they let me stay like this when I was in a coma. So they never pulled my arm out. So when I woke up, both my arms were stiff. And I couldn't pull them out myself because, as you know, as a quadriplegic, you have no tricep capabilities, really. You may have like some shoulder abilities, but
the quad, even the bicep, but without that quad to extend it back out, you're not going to get it. Right.
So I was sitting there like completely comatose and unable to help myself in all reality. You know, there was an occasional good therapist that would like really stretch me out. But when you're in hospital settings, those therapists don't really last very long.
Yeah.
They kind of like rotate in and out. You almost never get the same person. So it's not like you have like a continued plan of care that can really be followed up on. And you also got to remember this is like 18 years ago. So even knowledge of SCI was not quite as advanced as it is now. So they didn't really, the therapist then didn't really know how to take care of me or anything like that. However, when I went to Children's Specialized, which is like the second hospital I went to, or rehab center I went to in Jersey, they were fantastic, I have to say. Like their nurses, I still talk to some of them to this day. I mean, like they're pretty dope. I learned a lot about like trying to self-cath, transferring into my chair, getting strength into my biceps and things like that. Like Children's Specialized, the therapists and the nurses there were amazing. But that being said, transitioning back to home after you're done with rehab was not amazing. That was a bitch and a half for multiple reasons that you and I can probably get into it. But the biggest one was my home wasn't accessible, and nobody tells you how to do that cheaply. And in fact, there really isn't a real way to do that.
I don't think there is one.
But there are like pathways you can go through. Like if you went through United Spinal, for instance, there's a potential chance that you get a grant or something of that nature. And you can use some of that money to like build a lift or a ramp, whatever the case may be. Or you can go through just other organizations and do the same thing. But it took about 9 months for my family to be able to make my house accessible, which literally just meant getting a lift on the side, which was pretty expensive to get me up and down in my from the porch of my house to like the inner apartment. Yeah. So, because there's a lot of steps to my old home in Brooklyn. So that needed a full lift. They needed to like curve out the door a little bit, the door stopper, so that it actually was rounded out so I could get inside with a chair and not just get stuck on it. They had to expand my bedroom so I could have like more space for chairs and stuff like that. They had to do some things.
A lot's going on for a 13, 14-year-old, and it's a lot to cope with. So how was transitioning back to school. I was watching the video on the Level the Curve page where you just shared a little bit about, and some other guys talked about it as well. So what was high school and then later on college like for you?
High school was weird because once again, I'm new into disability. I don't know how to deal with it. And I don't even have like great fine motor skills or anything close to it at that point. Like even my tenodesis capabilities, for anyone who doesn't know, is just basically a reflex that you can trigger where you extend your fingers, your wrist and your fingers extend out. Or they'll grab when you tilt them back.
Yeah, when you tilt it back.
Yeah. So even that was like incredibly weak. Like my wrist flexors were not great. So going back to school, it's pretty hard because one, you're trying to like navigate your disability as in like, how do I even take notes anymore? Like I now, the school gave me a person to like dictate things with, but it's like, you're not used to that. You're not used to like having someone around you almost the entire day in school, for one. For two, like having them have to take notes, having you to repeat something that the teacher said to make sure that they got it the way that you need them to, that sort of thing. And like, also like just generally, trying to talk to other teenagers when there's a giant adult assistant in the room.
That's something I would have never thought about. Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Yeah. So making friends was like a little weird, right? Like it was like yeah, you want to make like your shitty, dirty, not woke jokes in the corner, and then like your adults, like 40-something-year-old male,
right over your shoulder, judging you.
Like, hey guys, that's funny. Like, I mean, like it's real wild. And I actually loved that dude. He was actually pretty dope. Like he was a doctor in his own country, yada yada. He was a cool dude. But it was just a weird situation also being in college where you like girls and like, you have like some older person just like following you around the entire time, trying to take notes for you, even at lunch. And it's like, I don't need you at lunch. Go back in your corner at lunch. Like lunch is for me.
Unplug them and just put them away for a while.
Yeah. So that was weird. And even like, you get a lot of like weird attention when you're the only person with a disability in the school too. So, the vice principal would like pull me over all the time and like try to have like 20-30 minute conversations about like how I'm doing, yada yada. She'd be checking in with my teachers and stuff. And it's not necessarily a bad thing per se, but like, sometimes you just really don't want that extra kind of attention from administration or something like that. Like
it kind of gets in the way of you trying to just feel normal. Like I'm just trying to do my regular everyday thing, but you're reminding me every chance you get that there's something wrong or that I'm different.
Right. Like every day. And so ironically, the first year wasn't bad actually. Like I got through it. I was a little bummed that I didn't really make too many friends, but I made it, right? The second year though was difficult because my old aide had left. And the new aide was like a slightly older lady who was bad at keeping up with me going from class to class, kind of berated me if she thought I was having conversations that she wasn't a fan of. And, oh yeah, literally. And almost never made it to class on time. Somehow, even though she's following me, she somehow never made it to class on time. I have no idea how the fuck that. She always gets distracted, goes and does something, and then comes right back. And I'm like, I to this day don't know what's happened to you. I don't know what's going on. But that was my first foray. She became my first foray into dealing with like accessibility issues in the school, because she kind of got to a place where she would just stop showing up for work, but she would clock in the paychecks or something like that. So it got to a point where I had to, because my school couldn't figure out how to replace her fast enough, I had to actually do my own notes and like write by pen and write in cursive and things like that. Learned it on my own. No one taught me. And, it was one of those things where for me, I was like, I have to be as independent as possible, even here, because this lady didn't show up for like 2-3 days and they still kept her on. So I don't know what was happening there. And on top of that, I started having to fight the administration because I was like, listen, if I can go and take these notes on my own, I don't need this aide to like come and sit down and do nothing and stare at me and judge my conversations with other people. Just let me do it because I do it better. It makes sense if I do it. You know? And I spent a good portion of like 5 months trying to convince them, hey, she's still not doing work. And I'm still here taking my notes because she's like not even staying in classes long enough to really take notes.
That's weird. That's weird. So she's in the class, but not staying, not being productive, clearly visible to the teacher. And
Right.
You're explaining this and they're still not giving you the support or the backup that you need, or even just dismissing her.
Right. Not even just dismissing her. So I ended up dismissing her.
All right, there you go.
At the end of the year, I was like, listen, I can do all of this, right? Like, I really don't need you. And I just went up to the assistant principal and I was like, look, I know you're trying to help me, but this is not helpful. This is actually making things worse. She's going in, she's doing this, that, the other thing, right? And I just need her away from me. And they fought me for like 2 months because they insisted that I was wrong, and that I didn't know enough about what I was talking about. Right?
Instead of just coming to observe and seeing what you're talking about, they're just fighting it.
Right. They just decided to like, hey, you deal with this. We'll see you later. Goodbye. So at some point, I literally just started like skipping out on her, just like running the class and then running to the next class until she couldn't figure me out. And then they were like, yeah, she's useless now. Well, yeah, she was before. So, so eventually like got past that and got into junior year, went to college, had a good run.
Now, clearly you're pushing towards independence and you're making your own discoveries about accessibility and adaptive ways to do things. How did that transition into an engineering career?
So when I first got hurt, my only goal was to run again, right? Like, if I'm going to stay on this planet, I need to be able to do the things I once loved.
Yeah.
And I wanted to run again. So from there, I was like, well, Tony Stark built a suit of iron that helps him go fight dragons. I think I can build something that helps me run again. And maybe I can help other people run in the process, right? Like, what if you can do that? What if you can run and also help other people run in the process? But back then I didn't have like a ton of tools. I didn't have much engineering experience at all. So it just kind of trickled in over time. Like I would get a random book here and there, or I would get some random tool from someone, something like that. Or like a problem to solve, like something constantly keeping me in like a problem solving state.
Okay.
And I would just keep doing them, just keep doing them. So when I was 17 and I was applying for colleges, I was like, what kind of profession could I get into that keeps me in this state but doesn't require me to be ridiculously in school for like 20,000 years. Right? Like, what kind of like pathway can I take where I encompass as much as I can and not have to spend my entire life at school? And I found out it was mechanical engineering, right? So once I found out it was mechanical engineering, I was like, oh, maybe I can use this to build my suit. Maybe I can actually
Back to the Iron Man.
So at that point I was like, okay, well, I like fixing things. I like problem solving. I do it for other people all the time. Why don't I just go forward with this, right? Like, why not just go forward with the idea of building this suit for myself that could potentially help other people too? And so in high school, I had already met my business partner, Khan, in a Spanish class where we were making a ton of noise. And well, we vibed on a certain level, and he's more in tune with the engineering principles than I am, to be honest. And he was interested in doing the same thing. He was basically interested in doing the same thing where he was like, okay, well, I like you, bro, and I think you should be able to like go out and have fun too. So why don't we start like trying to design things together? Right. And like we're super young. That didn't hold up. Like we would occasionally like just go talk in a corner and be like, hey, this would be a cool idea for a device. And then could look at me and be like, yeah, this will also be a cool idea for a device. But we never really like sunk our teeth into it. Not until I went to my second college, Polytech, where I had a moment where I just really needed community to help out someone that I loved get into the therapy position. And I needed her to see people with disabilities work out and potentially like work as well, get money for everything that they're doing. So I took her to this place called Axis. The Axis Project is a gym, and it's like a workout space in Brooklyn, originally in Harlem, that people with disabilities can go into, do whatever workout they want to do, and leave, right? I took her into the inception of that, and in that process, one of the people I met was Eli, and he's one of my business partners there as well. He's pretty good at marketing and social media based things. So when I met him, unfortunately, he was in a chair too. And unfortunately, I had known him before when he wasn't.
If you guys knew each other prior to his accident, and then we connected afterwards. Right. And we kind of thought it was a little bit serendipitous, right? Because he started getting into politics. He started getting to know people more and more often. And politics with disability related focus, right? Like, planning events like 401, the 40K, or, just like job search cup and things like that. Mm-hmm. So eventually I got really close with Eli while I was already close to Khan. And then since I realized like all our missions aligned in reality, we decided to form a company called Level the Curve. And basically see if we can make adaptive equipment that helps users and also is something that we want to use, with Eli being more the marketer and Khan being more the engineer. Okay, so now you've met up essentially with the team, and you guys have the need because physically two of you already know, hey, we experience this on a regular basis. I'm sure you've used some of the adaptive tools, and I could say two of the problems that I know I come across is one, not all of them are one size fit all, because even though you and I are similar in our injury levels, I don't have as much function on my left arm, nor do I have wrist and hand control. So a lot of times, even though a device is made, it may not be made for me and my level of injury. And on top of that, they're expensive as hell. Like a silverware set can go up to almost $100, and it's just a fork, spoon, and a knife, and with a little metal ring on it. So it's like, first of all, it might not work for me, and then I just spent part of my income. So So what were some of the bigger issues, including those I just mentioned, that you guys wanted to tackle with Level the Curve?
Almost exactly that, right? Like, there's a lot of tools out there that were very basic, but also very expensive. Like there was a thing that you could put like a rubber mount around something like this. rubber mount where like you could literally just like wrap it around your wrist and like throw a metal plate in there and then put like a fork inside. And it was like $70. And it's like, what are you talking about?
Yep.
What are we really getting at here? Because that should not be $70. That's like homemade craft stuff that you've managed to sell. Why would it be $70? And we would always get so enraged at that, right? Like we would get enraged, we would be very like, we can't really get all these things we're supposed to get because insurance is not covering it either. What do we do, right? So that's part of what LTC was really born of, like just noticing the market and just being like, yo, this is so centered on somebody helping you versus you doing something for yourself. And that's what we do. We actually make products that make you like do something for you. Help you out.
Do you have a product line, or do you guys go based on individual consultations why someone might need to actually get something done?
We do both. So we do have a product line. It's called Vesta. In that product line, there's this lovely thing here called the eating tool.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially it does the same thing as the previous stuff, right? But what you can do is instead of like having it, you know, in some metal piece that you have to like re-slide onto something else, you have like two hoops here and a mid-center here, right?
Yeah.
So I can use the fork. Done good. Stripper in here. And it holds good grip.
Okay.
Right, like it's not like falling out too much. Wiggles good. You can scoop with it, and like you're not gonna have any problems or anything like that. And you don't have to worry about like the spoon falling out or something of that nature. So this is our first product line. We're going to add more things to it, like clothing utensils and things like that soon enough. But we also consult. So right now we're helping out Lawrence Harding from Spinal Mobility in New York, which is basically like a program to help people rehab while strengthening their trunk and like locking into their core. It's a fantastic program. He came to us one day and was basically like, hey, can you help me like build something out like this? And we were like, sure. And it has some complicated pieces to it, but it's pretty dope. It's a pretty good idea too.
So, I mean, I want to talk a little bit about your work with the MTA because transportation is the bane of many of our existences. I can't say Miami compares to New York, but transportation out here is not easy. We use a lot of public transportation as well. Like if you don't have a car or you're not taking the city bus, like, yo, you can't get anywhere down here. And if you've experienced it as I've experienced it, it's hell. Whether dealing with paratransit or whether dealing with just the public transportation as well. And I've been left out for hours, or the driver swears, no, you weren't there. And I'm like, my dude, it's my house. Where else would I have been if I was waiting for you to pick me up? And so advocating for transportation, for equality and equity when it comes to safe transportation, I've kept my head in the van because they didn't strap me down well enough. So we've had all sorts of issues, almost fell off. I should have fell off. That would have been a hell of a lawsuit, but I didn't want to hurt myself more. But tell me a little bit about, hey, I thought, you know, when you think about something like right afterwards, like, damn, that was my chance to come
I should let that go.
But tell me a little bit about how you got involved with MTA and the work you do on the regular.
Ooh. So I have to say, I am an MTA employee. This is my personal business for anyone who's in the MTA right now. I'm not representing the MTA right now, right? It's for like legal purposes.
Yeah, so, don't get the man in trouble. We just talking personally.
With that being said, paratransit is the bane of my existence. The bane of most of our existences.
Yep.
As you know, am a disability advocate, generally, first and foremost. I was one of the people who kind of helps get like accessible cabs going in New York City, along with a friend of mine who was working in transit at the time. I've had multiple stories where I've been left with accessoride in the rain, snow, all sorts of stuff for hours on end. Like literally supposed to pick me up at 6 o'clock, comes at like midnight. Like it's been it was a ride. It's a ride. That being said, I had a friend who was working at the MTA at the time. I literally just finished my degree with mechanical engineering, and I just needed a career starter job, right? Like something to get into.
Yeah, something to get you started right out of school.
Right. My friend was like commissioner for the ADA at the time. He put in a good recommendation. I had already interviewed before he even knew anything about it, right? So when he saw my interview pop up, he's just like let me help you out and like give you some good recommendations, right? Like those sort of things. So via him, I think I got through my second interview, got through my third interview, and ended up becoming a mechanical engineer for the MTA. Literally. I'm a believer that you can work on things from the inside.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's better than being on the outside and not having any power at all, to be honest. So I try to help out with elevators and escalators as much as I can.
Now, I'm gonna be honest. I was supposed to be in New York in 2018 for a cousin's wedding, and besides just some of the other concerns of flying when you have your wheelchair, someone was just like, "Man, it's not a great place to be as a wheelchair user." They're like, there are a lot of city streets without the sidewalks not having the dip to get down off the curb. They're like, yes, some of the subways have elevators and stuff, but half of them don't work, or unfortunately, there are homeless people living in them, and it's a bit of a struggle to get through the city, and it discouraged me a little bit. Like I said, there were other complications as well, but I was just like, I would hate to be halfway to where I gotta go, and now I'm stuck here for 2-3 hours.
Everything you said is true. It's not a lie, right? Like, they're pretty bad curb cuts that don't like angle out well. They're super steep, like sometimes 20, 30 degree angles. Not a lot of the subway. Yeah, it's crazy. There are more elevators in the system now, and there are going to be more elevators in the system now. But before Alex Olaguden and some of the other MTA members, like, there weren't a lot. There are barely any, to be honest. But as a native New Yorker, there's a way around things, right? Like, as any disability, advocate or person with a disability knows, you may have to take like 2 or 3 buses to get to the same spot, but you have to go take those 2 or 3 buses, right? Like, that there's a way, right? Versus you sitting around and like getting shafted because there's no like subway station exactly where you need to be. So that's my caveat to that. It's like, as bad as New York actually is with accessibility generally, there's still ways around it here versus most other places.
You have the will, there's a way. Even if you have to kind of go a bit out of your way, I guess, to use the word again, but at least you can make it happen. And then on top of that, I'm assuming to continue to advocate, because if you're seeing some of those changes happening, seeing the repairs to the elevators or just more elevators, that does mean that someone's listening and they're trying to make a difference.
Yeah. I mean, the reason we have an ADA commissioner for MTA right now, or even before, was because advocates were constantly going out saying like, we need representation here. We need representation here. If we don't have representation here, what's the point? Like, how are you guys going to know what to do with us?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now because of that, we have like a fully accessible station in Fulton, like blind, deaf, physically mobility challenged. fully accessible. Because of that, there's more elevators going up now than there has been in the last like 15 to 20 years. Right? People need to work. It's you got to keep advocating. You got to keep fighting. You have to keep like trudging the line and pushing it forward, and make sure you're advocating like accurately, where you're not like having people who are just being hyperbolic all the time and like not really knowing the issues, just like wanting to yell and stuff in the street. You know, you got to be careful about that too. And not to say that there's no room for that person, right? Like sometimes you really just need a person to like pop up.
You
like,
need that one pit bull or to make the noise and shout loud, but it has to be with the strategy. There has to be a purpose, because if it's just that, then it's not going to go anywhere. Now, I had another question, but I have to backtrack a little bit, because we're talking about advocacy, and again, we are brown folk. So I was just looking just through your link tree and stuff, and it was just talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and I can't say I'm militant. I've never been militant, but I'm like the step right under militant. I'm like, I ain't gonna burn a building, but I'll break a window. So it was kind of difficult for me to see a lot of what was going on, because in 2016, around my birthday, actually in July, there were like there was a couple killings, and then I guess it kind of sparked off a few years after my injury. So I kind of felt like if I wasn't injured, I would have been out there. I would have been to some degree protesting or advocating or lobbying, whatever it may have been. Yeah. But that didn't stop many other wheelchair users or people with disabilities out there. And I know you've shared some words about it. So can you tell me a little bit about, again, just being a Black man in New York and just dealing with the backlashes or just the responses throughout that whole beginning of that movement?
I'd probably have to start at the beginning of my life. So many mixed things. Honestly, just being a Black man in a chair in general, like, I think we have the benefit of time in the sense of like, there's a lot more woke ideology, a lot more people who see more chairs on screen or whatever the case may be. But I remember like 10 years ago, if someone's baby came up to me and started playing, their moms would snatch them. like almost looking at me as if I was like borderline evil, right? Like really like picked up the child, snared to look at me, and then walked away. And it wasn't like I've never been a badly dressed dude to the point where I look homeless or anything like that, right? Like I wasn't belligerent. I wasn't even talking to the kid, really. He just started like saying some stuff.
Kids, they're friendly, they'll come through.
Yeah. And like you see a lot of weird stuff like that around. You know what I mean? Like, especially when George Floyd got shot, and the way that like people were pretending like there was even a fucking case, right? Like, this is not a case. He was cut his knee, like this dude cut his knee on a man's neck for 10 minutes straight. He was screaming for his life. He was screaming for his mom, and no one cared. No one gave a shit, right? Like, none of the other cops stopped him. The deli owner didn't call anybody. We just watched a man die on tape.
I've not watched the whole thing. I don't know how people can and have, but I'm like, look, I can't take any more nightmares. I'm good.
And, like, I think that was just like the culmination. I don't even think I fully got through it. I kind of just skipped through to like the end because he was wailing after a while. I was like, yo, did anybody come to help him? Because it's crazy that like there's still 8 more minutes of this. You know what I mean? Somebody, one of you 3 cops should have fucking come around and help him. And you just see him laying there. You know what I mean? And like, as someone who's dealt with racism in different forms, And even from literally not being able to date someone because I'm Black, to being ignored in certain rooms because I'm Black and not, how do I say it? Not on impact considered intelligent, right? Like, or notable. I've both been incredibly visible and incredibly invisible, depending on what room and situation that I'm in.
Depending on something I'm feeling, I'm sorry to cut you off. I had a conversation with Ian Reuter from New Mobility Magazine, and he was asking about my perspective as not only a Black man, but now a Black man in a wheelchair with a disability. And I was just like, well, before I was perceived as a threat, 6'1", 250, big Black guy, twist in my hair, I have a deep voice, I have a presence. You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna say I'm intimidating from how they perceive some of us may dress, but I have a presence. Now on the other side, I'm almost invisible because I'm now in the wheelchair. And I'm like, I think I preferred being a threat. I don't know, because there was some relevancy versus now being overlooked and being assumed because we're wheelchair users, we're not intelligent, we may not be eloquent, we may not have something to say or participate. So I don't know, man. I kind of miss it, but
it's like a double-edged sword for me, because there are times where I'll hop on the train, right? And like, I don't know if you ever experienced this, but like, everyone is staring at you all the time. You're like a spectacle.
Yeah.
And like, there are a lot of times where like, I will wear a hoodie because I'm like, I just don't want to sense so many eyes on me at once, right? Like calm down. It's a wheelchair. You've seen it before.
Like, what do you expect to happen now that
and I think it doubles up with like, as a Black person, you experience a myriad of things, right? From people being very uncomfortable with you for honestly no apparent reason, to too comfortable with you for no good reason. And there's like brothers who will come up to you and literally just be like, hey man, I was in a wheelchair for like 2 weeks and you're like my brother in arms. And it's like, 2 weeks, huh?
Like, I broke my ankle playing basketball, so I'm off the court for a month and a half. So I'm right there with you, bro. No.
But, so going back to this, right? Like, I've entered stores and had gotten like two different reactions from people, right? Where one where they think I'm stealing shit, because if you go in there with a bag and you have a disability and you're a Black man, it's like the manager is almost instantly ready to pop up and like come popping, like someone's already ready to be at the end of the aisle and just kind of be like, hey, let me check your tags. Can I check your receipts? And I'm like, why? Why are you checking my receipts? Is it because you think I'm a homeless Black man in a wheelchair? Is that why you think that is? You didn't care about checking me or anything like that when I came into the store. Why is it like, why is this a problem, right? Like, there's so many people who came in with bags in the store.
You're fitting not just one profile, but several profiles now. And one thing I really wanted to share with you from the African Americans, I guess people with disabilities panel we were on a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Yourself and a few of the other folks on the panel talked about an experience that I hadn't experienced yet. How, and I say yet, how people assume you're shot. You were shot. You guys jinxed me. I swear y'all jinxed me. Because in January it happened to me. And again, I heard other people share their stories. You guys told me about it. And it was just, I was like, oh, so this is what y'all were talking about. When the nurse, and I'm in the middle of a UTI, I'm in the ER, straight up autonomic dysreflexor, trying not to die. And the lady was just like, oh, okay, so you were shot?
Were you shot? I'm like, yeah. Why are you?
I'm like, first of all, I've come to this hospital like 8 times. Y'all got my chart. Like, just read. Just look.
And it's such a classic thing. It's such a classic thing.
Oh, and I thought to you guys immediately. And I was like, oh. And then I was talking about it recently with Paul Amadeus Lane, and I was just like, that quick second in your mind, you're like, should I cuss this person out? Or should I make this like a funny or learning experience? And I was floating there for a second. I was like, man, if I wasn't feeling so sick, I'd cuss you out.
I'd cuss you out.
Cuss you out. So, and then I followed up with the doctor afterwards with her in the room. And I was just like, look, you can't just assume people just shot because I'm brown, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it touched me again. And it made me think that even when you are as non-threatening as we may look, there are other preconceived notions, or there are assumptions about us, or the fact that they may think, well, he probably got shot because he was a criminal or doing something, or he's probably a criminal now, not knowing that you're an engineer, you're an advocate, you're working for the city trying to make lives better. That I myself, I'm doing what, I'm advocating for healthcare and people with disabilities, not knowing because they have these preconceived notions for whatever reason, whatever they may be. And that just brings me to my final question, whereas Stefan, the person, Stefan, the entrepreneur, Stefan, the advocate, Stefan, the MTA employee, like, what is your message? Like, what is your mission? What gets you up each and every day to continue pushing through, literally, wheelchair, pushing through and living this life?
Everybody can be independent. Everybody can do it. You can escape whatever shitty situations you're in. And to be honest, my lifelong journey is and I think everyone's lifelong journey is to really find peace within yourself. But I've come so much closer to peace and happiness within myself through creating more independence with myself. And I've seen other people who are not as independent, or don't think they can be, or don't think they can live a life or go out or go have relationships or anything like that. And my entirety of my being right now is literally just to be able to say, like, hey, you absolutely can. And if I need to make these tools to help you not have basically like the barrier in your head that says that you can't do it, I will make these tools. I'll make whatever tool you want me to. You can do it. You can get out and you can do these things. You can live a meaningful, fulfilling, successful, I don't say successful, that's a loaded word, but like a really fulfilling life. You can have a fulfilling life, So don't quit. Keep fighting. Always fight, no matter what. It's my thing.
Word. Tell the people how to get in touch with Level the Curve, social media, the website, whole 9 yards.
Sure. So you can find us at levelthecurve.com, Instagram at Level the Curve, Facebook, facebook.com/levelthecurve. You can find me at Instagram, crazywolf4289. It's a whole different story of itself. And reach out any way you want.
Stefan, like, I wish there was more time for us to keep doing, having these conversations, because we can have a whole episode about anime, comics, and everything by itself. But I just want to say thanks, man. I'm glad we connected, and I know we plan on staying connected even more so. I don't know about coming to see you in New York, because I don't do cold weather. I'm a Miami boy. Sunlight, anything less than 68 degrees is unnecessary. I don't get it.
Come in the summer, bro. Come in the summer. It's like 90-something degrees out here. It is wow.
That sounds more like home to me. All right, we'll definitely stay connected. I appreciate you coming through. I'll have the website and everything up in our episode notes. Everybody can check it out. And of course, just the work you guys are doing in the community, I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you, man. Thanks for having me on. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, bud. Take care.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in to the show. Connect with the podcast on social media. Check out our Instagram page at ramp.it.up.podcast or email us at rampituppodcast@gmail.com. Until next time.